like to introduce both Doreen and Juana, and then they can get started. Juana Medina wrote Juana and Lucas. That book won the 2017 Pura Belpré Award and many others. It is a fabulous book. Her publicist sent me a copy, and I thought, she has just got to come to this festival. It is so fabulous. Juana, the main character, is a young girl growing up in Bogota, Colombia with her dog Lucas. Her abuelo, grandfather, wants to take her to the Space Center in the USA, and she has all these things that she likes and she doesn't like, and she's always talking about those. And I thought it was kind of cute that she doesn't like the English. But by going to the USA, she picks up some words, and it's not quite as daunting to her. But this is a perfect story for an early reader. And that's one of the reasons I wanted Doreen and wanted to come, because Doreen's books, her picture books, help kids with concepts. And they're not just a picture and a word. They're really a very clever story. And her early readers are books that allow young people who are ready to read to kind of pick up a story, and there's action and adventure, and they're fun. I just think it's such a nice way to introduce kids to reading. Doreen Cronin, who wrote The Dark Shadows, The Chicken Squad, Another Misadventure, is the author of many award-winning books, starting with the Caldecott Honor book, Click Clack Moo. Her latest book is the fourth Chicken Squad book. Evidently, there is a creepy shadow following the Chicken Squad. How are they going to get ready for the family reunion? And I thought it was really funny that at the family reunion, there are 85 cousins and relatives, and all of their names start with a B. I don't know how she thinks these things up, but they're just great. But I like the fact that picture books engage the listener. Her early reader books have mystery and action. Both Doreen and Juana write books that help children learn logic, engage them in stories, and help them on their way to reading and comprehending books.
Thank you so much. My voice is very loud with a microphone. Thank you so much for coming. This is my first time here, and also Juana as well, at this book festival. I love outdoor book festivals. I love book festivals in general. Just to kind of combine the outside and the activity with books, with literature. So your kids are running around and having a good time, but they still get to read. They still get to meet authors. They still get to meet illustrators. And it's kind of just a great family book activity, right? And it gets everybody in the same place at the same time. And I hate to sound like a dinosaur, but off their phones, right? Like, not on a phone, not looking at a screen, but looking at books and looking at people and having conversations. So it's so exciting to be here. Juana and I just met this morning, but we actually did a book together. Juana and I did this book together 2 years ago?
2 or 3 years ago, yeah.
And it was a book about SMIC, and the manuscript came to me in a strange way because I was playing a word game with my kids, and it was called Chunks or something. So you had to pick a blend. We used to call them blends, but now they call them chunks. Like an SM or a TH, and then you pick the end of the word. And while you were trying to form a word, I formed the word SMIC. That isn't a word, but I like the way that it sounds. So the sound stuck in my head, and I wrote this very, very simple manuscript. And everything just rhymes basically with SMIC, so it starts with the dog, and we can go through this a little bit more. Oh, thanks, Juana. And I just thought, well, what am I going to do with a dog named SMIC? And I had no idea. The thing about what I'm writing is I have no idea what anything looks like. I don't know what this dog looks like. I don't know what his world is going to look like, and I don't see it, and I don't even imagine it. It's just not my purview, and I don't have that sight, because illustrators have a very different kind of sight, which Juana can speak to. But I thought, what am I going to do with this very simple manuscript? And there's SMIC, and there's stick, and then go SMIC go, and good SMIC. And now I watched these illustrations. When I saw these illustrations, it's an incredible feeling when you see your character for the first time, because I don't know what SMIC looks like. I have no idea. until Juana creates, breathes life into a dog named Smick, because I didn't know who he was until I saw it. And I was like, oh my God, that's Smick. That's who it is. And this book in particular, I was blown away when I saw this book, because look at this white space. I mean, look at the balance and the quiet on these pages, because you're sitting with presumably someone very young, a very, very young pre-reader. Maybe you're in preschool, but I always picture this with like a baby almost. And you've got, they're only gonna look at this, right? Look at this. I wanted to talk about this because we've never had a chance to really discuss it, but you've got this simplicity of this line, of Juana's line, and I wanna know how long it took you to come up, if that's your line all the time, if you create new line for every book. But the movement, there's so much movement, but so much simplicity at the same time. And there's almost like, who even cares about the words, right? The words are not important. And I've said this at panels before, and I get in big trouble from authors, because I think in picture books, especially with pre-readers, the words are not that important. I think it's the sound of your voice. It just gives the parent or the caregiver or somebody. I mean, there's cadence to it, of course, and I do take care in what I'm writing, but the way to make readers is with pictures. I believe that that's their first go-to for books. It's a visual, just like your face is your face, and that's what they come to love, and that's what they come to recognize and feel safe by. And I think these books, that's what they're looking at. And the words, they're all fine and well, but eventually the words and those visuals will come together, and then that's how pre-readers are going to learn that's what a book is. But in the beginning, that's your go-to. And in a book like this, where there's very few words, it's the least amount of words I've ever written in my professional life. I haven't counted the words. I think there might be 38 words,
Yes.
which is, not a bad day's work, as they say. But it probably took me a month to write the book. Because when you're writing picture books, you spend more time taking things out than putting them in. Because you don't want clutter. I don't want word clutter. We have enough word clutter, and I think with young readers too, with pre-readers, what can you get rid of? If I have to add so much to a story to make it work, then it's not a good story. I should be able to take out, every single time I do a draft, what can I take out? I'm gonna say it out loud, how does that sound? And it has to make sense the rhythm of it has to make sense. And it has to be something that a child is gonna be able to follow and not worry about all that clutter. So, Juana, do you want to, explain? Look at that. And then you've got the chick, rhymes with Smick, right? Brilliant. And that's a completely different visual. So can you talk about how that came to be?
It's really interesting. As Doreen just said, we just met, and here's the book that we basically built together, but we've never met before. And it's so interesting to hear you say about taking out, what can I take out? And it was so funny while working on this book and receiving word from the art director saying, can you add a few extra lines? Because your drawings are so simple that we want to make sure that when people see a dog, they recognize a dog and it's not too abstract. So I was coming from the absolute opposite side,
direction.
where I was trying to take everything out. And it's also interesting to hear you say how words seem secondary in picture books. Because especially in this book, I wanted to make sure, and when I did the initial sketches, I took a lot of interest in the typography being dynamic and going from one page to the other, so that it would be basically part of the illustration, so that when you see Smick go, you actually see the typography going from one page to the other. So it was important for me that, yes, there would be plenty of open space, but that the words were actually a very important part within the visual itself. So we were, without knowing, it was teamwork.
Yeah, but it's really, and some of the books I've worked on, like Click Clack Moo, I've known Betsy Lewin for 20 years now. We know each other. I still can't draw, but she could write that. She could write the Click Clack series herself. Like, we work not closely together at the same place in the same table, but we understand each other. And I think sometimes if you get like an illustrator like Juana, my question is, when you get this, do you think, oh my gosh, there's not enough words here, how am I supposed to do this? Or do you get, oh, I've got all this space and freedom to work with?
I think more the latter, yes.
Is it I've got to really...
It's very exciting to think, okay, there's all this open space. It's almost like having a big blank page that you can draw on. So it just becomes this blank canvas. At the same time, you want to make sure that you're respectful of the manuscript and that you're keeping in mind the vision that you might have had when writing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And when did you decide that you were going to do the stick and the chick in a different medium, I guess? Is that the right word?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I was refusing to do it, and the art director was
I don't know any of
very, very interested in having the collage components, and they were insisting, and I was thinking, no, but I like more just the simple illustration, and I'm glad they did suggest it, and I finally listened, and so I took a little rosemary stick from a rosemary tree that I had at home, and that's the stick. I scanned it. And then for the chick, for the little birdie, I tried all sorts of things. So I thought of feathers, I thought of little puff balls, and all sorts of things. And then finally I started looking into petals, and here's a little secret. So this is an Astramelia flower petal.
Really?
Astromelias are from Colombia, and I'm from Colombia. So I thought, okay, there's that little waving back home.
That's brilliant.
Through
I
that
have no
little
idea.
chick.
That's
Yeah.
like a wink. That's a little wink to...
Exactly.
That's that's beautiful. I didn't even know that was a petal. Okay, this is how separate it is sometimes. Like the art direction, when you get into art direction, the author's just, I'm done, right? And not only do I want to be done, because I don't want to interfere in that, right? Because I don't have that visual. So I don't want a voice at that table because it's almost like I don't speak the language, right? Like I want to remove myself from it because a lot of times we insist on being heard when we might not know what we're talking about. And I do that enough. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that when you're working with someone else's talents. Like I don't want to interfere in that. So I had no idea about any of this, and I wasn't sure what I thought that was. But a petal, I did not know that was a flower petal, let alone from Colombia. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So-
fantastic.
No, and it was great fun, and it also was adding color without me having to come up with the color. So, not to say I'm lazy, but it's
Any
solved a
shortcut
couple
is good when you're
problems.
trying to get a lot of stuff done, right? Like any shortcut is good. How can I, as long as it works.
Right, exactly. When it works, and it's just what you were just saying about being able to stand back and realize, okay, this is done. I don't have to color in, and I don't have to come up with all sorts of textures or things because the flower was already giving all that beauty to it. So I didn't have to go in and modify anything.
So the yellow in the flower is how the petal actually is.
Right, so I
Wow.
just cut the petal a little bit so that the shape was more like a bird, but the colors were just as the flowers were. So I just scanned in a bunch of petals, and then I would be trying to look for the ones that would be similar in shape to the bird,
Wow.
to chick. Yeah.
And when you see this finally, were you happy with it? Like to me, I see it, it's a gift, it's a surprise, because I have no idea. It is like opening a gift. Like what is this book gonna be? Because all I ever see, I'm looking at, this might be one typed page of words that looks like any other typed page of words. So when I get to see this, it really is an incredible gift. When you see it, do you look at it with an artist's eye, or do you look at it with a reader's eye? How do you look at it?
That's really an interesting question. I was trying to look at it. I mean, you have to be very critical of yourself.
That's true.
And I think it was good to stand back and realize that I had been very stubborn about not wanting to add the collage,
Okay.
and that it was working, and that it was, that it's important to listen to others.
Sometimes,
And just be
not
like,
always.
okay, I'll try it out and see what happens. So I was very excited. Also one thing that made me very happy was that it was working with so few elements.
Right.
And that there was no need to add a lot of action. I think that we live in a world that is so hyper stimulated in
Yes.
every regard.
Absolutely.
That it could be almost, if you will, a sort of meditative process to sit and find a blank page and let your imagination fill in all that blank space,
Right.
just through the words and the actions that are being shown. So I was very happy. Yeah.
I get very nervous. You get a box of books. Sometimes you get when it's first printed, you get one copy. And my editor, at Simon & Schuster, she wraps it up in wrapping paper and she puts a bow. And she's a great wrapper. I'm like the world's worst. Like everybody knows where the presents come from me because the paper is like, it's like like a ball of paper I try to smush down with big tape. But she sends this beautiful gift, and I always have a hard time opening it. There is this anxiety when it's done because there's no turning back. Your words are done, the art is done, everything's done. I'm always terrified I'm going to find some terrible, horrible mistake in it. It's never happened. I don't know why that would happen, but there is this sense. And when they send the box, you get a box of like 20 of them. I don't open it for months. I just can't. Because it arrives and I know what it is and I can't. It's like something's going to jump out of it and, upset my life. And there's a lot of, I guess they feel personal for a while until they're out in the world for a while. And then you're like, oh, hey, there's Smick, or hey, there's Click Clack Moo. But do you have the same anxiety when you see something done? Is it different? Or do you not? Are you normal?
No,
you don't have that.
It's so interesting to hear somebody else talk about that anxiety and just feeling like,
We need like a support group apparently for writers and illustrators, like all these strange anxieties that we have. But
basically, but yes, because it's been something that you have put your heart into, and you want it to be received well, and you want it to work well, and there's been a great amount of effort in putting it together, and so then there's the moment of truth. Is it gonna live up to the standard, and how will the world perceive it? So yeah, absolutely.
So you're just okay.
I'm a little too curious to keep that box closed for a long time.
I do. I just finished my first young adult novel, which took me years and years and years. And it was a real challenge, and my editor really had to push me. I mean, just push me to add elements that I'm not used to. I'm used to. And my first draft was like 75 pages, and I thought, man, that was hard, a lot of work. And when it's done years later, it's 320 pages or something. But she sent me the box, and she was so excited. She's like, "Did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it?" And I kept ignoring her email because she worked so hard on this that she wanted me to see it done, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it, and I didn't open the box. Because I'm still nervous. It came out last week, and I'm still too attached to it. So I'm going to have to wait. Probably. Oh God. No! Put it away!
It looks great. Yeah.
I do know what it looks like. I can tell you that. I do know what it looks like. But it's still like, ooh, like it's a piece of me that fell off, and I don't want to look at it yet. But I will look at it. But it is that you do put a lot into it. And I think, the words are the words. All the words already exist, right? They are what they are. But art always fascinates me because Smick does not exist, right? The letters I use to make Smick already exist. Like, anybody can write Smick, Chick, Stick. All the authors are all using the same set of words. They're in the dictionary. Those are the words, right? So you're going to put them in a different kind of order. But artists and illustrators are creating creatures and characters that don't exist, and oftentimes making their own colors, too. You're not even using, the book of Pantone colors.
Right.
You're creating colors that don't exist to create characters that don't exist. And I'm always just in absolute awe of that process. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to leave the rest to Juana. She's going to draw. But I wanted to ask Juana and Lucas. And we talked about this a lot at the front, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about this story and how much is it autobiographical, how much of it is you, and to make that switch, or to do both, to illustrate and write at the same time.
I'll tell you, but don't leave yet, because I'd love to hear a little bit more about your books as well. But so this is a story that is based on something that happens when I was little. I grew up in Colombia, in Bogota, and people speak Spanish in Colombia. And one day my mom picked me up at school, and I was furious. And my mom asked what was wrong and what was going on, and I said, they want to teach me something called the English, and I really don't want to learn. And she was very smart, because she said to me, well, we're going to Disney World, and Mickey Mouse only speaks English. And so that sold me. I had to learn how to speak English. I mean, here we are speaking in English, but of course I went to Disney World and Mickey Mouse doesn't even speak. So that was a very sad moment, but I couldn't unlearn all my English, so I decided to put it into a book. And the story, it has a couple variations. I couldn't include all my cousins, and a lot of family, and some details have changed, but it's based on that story. So it has a little bit of Spanish peppered throughout the book, and hopefully the readers, whether they speak Spanish or not, or whether they've been to Latin America or not, it doesn't really matter, will find a new friend and a new adventure that they will enjoy. Yeah.
Are you going to do a follow-up?
Yes,
You
I'm
are?
working.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm working
Okay.
on book 2, and it seems like there will be a book
There'll be
3.
Oh,
So
that's
yes, it's very exciting.
That's huge and unusual. That's unusual. It's very difficult. Publishing has changed a lot in the last 20 years or so, and to have a book and then kind of go straight to 2 more is really a remarkable thing. Now, I have a question now.
Okay.
Did you write the manuscript first and then go back in and think, where do I need art? Or are you illustrating the story while you're telling it?
It's a really good question. So it was very interesting to hear you say how you don't have necessarily a visual of the characters that you're creating. Because for me, it was essential to have a visual of Juana, at least, to get some of her characteristics. And I knew that she was a little bit sassy and a little bit vulnerable and a little bit chubby and all these things that I could just visualize enough so that it would, in my mind, be easier to write it. And so I started sketching, then went back to writing, and it was almost like a 3-layered cake where there was all the writing, then the design and adding in the Spanish, but I wanted the Spanish to be fluid because I think many readers are so smart, they don't need an index card in the back or anything, but I wanted for them to figure out, like, oh, I know what that word means, and so it would be trompeta or triciclo, words that they could, be like, oh, trompeta,
So
trumpet.
it's in context when you're doing it, you're not like, this
just
means...
for them to feel smart. I just remember that feeling as a kid and just feeling like, oh, I know what that means. And so after the language and the design, just to make sure that the type would make things to read a little bit easier, then I went in and drew again.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that informed the writing, and there were some tweaks.
Wow.
So it was a bit of a dance back and forth.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And so then you've got an editor and an art director, though, at the same time.
Yes.
Did you finalize the manuscript and then finalize art? Are you doing...
So I finalized the manuscript, and then I finalized the art, and then it went through another revision, and it was very funny because I remember on the line editing at the end, receiving a note. So the character is based on me when I was a kid, and it's called Juana. I'm called Juana, and I received this note from copy editing saying, this doesn't sound like something Juana would say, and I just felt like, that is so meta.
Oh,
like,
look at you. That's you.
That's
Look,
me.
it's baby
yeah.
Juana. Oh, my gosh.
So I think it is funny how it's really interesting how there's a whole team behind each book that we rarely get to recognize, that get to know you so well that they write to you saying, this is something you would not say.
But did you stand your ground on that one? Or
No, they were absolutely
Were you like, you're right, I would
I
never...
I just felt like, oh my goodness, they are absolutely right about this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I think sometimes you get so involved in what you're doing that you don't see certain details, and so it was very, very helpful for them to be like, no, that doesn't, or what about this? And they're very gentle throughout the process, so it's not like they are scolding you, but
No, but they're extremely gentle, almost to the point where they think that if they actually just come out and give you negative feedback, you may crumble or something. I always find it you get treated, I think, very delicately, which is very funny to me, because I used to be an attorney, and if I wrote a memo that my partner didn't like, the words that they would write on a piece of paper back to me and the criticisms were so pointed. There was no room for like, oh, this might hurt her feelings. Like, they don't care. Nobody cares. And so then when you get to publishing, and everybody does treat the story with a tremendous amount of care and a tremendous amount of delicacy, to the point, I think, because they understand that it's you. There's a part of you.
Right.
So there's a different treatment of it. And feedback is hard sometimes. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about feedback, but I've been talking to middle schoolers and somewhat younger ones. Last week I was traveling around and we did a presentation on criticism versus feedback.
Oh, wow.
And how criticism, if you're going to write, if you're going to do anything, you have to decide very early on to what you're going to do with criticism, right? If you're going to let that sink in and change your course or how you see yourself or how you see your work, and you're going to have to develop the sense to differentiate criticism from feedback. Because anything you do creates, and it's not just creatively, it's not just if you're a writer or an illustrator or a singer, or anything you're going to do. You can be a teacher. Someone's going to come in and watch you teach one day, right? And they're going to give you feedback. And you have to find a space for that feedback that isn't personal,
right,
that is about the book, or where Juana will have to say, all right, would Juana say that? Like, because I think our first instinct is to be defensive.
Absolutely.
And fight the fight, right? No, this is my character. This is, or you're not getting it, or you're not understanding. And I think kids do it, grown-ups do it. I still do it to a certain point, where I have to step back when I get feedback sometimes and not look at it that day or process it and then come back. But you do expose yourself to feedback from a lot of different people that it's necessary
Absolutely.
to get to the end of the book, but you have to develop a way to manage your reaction to it. So I would tell that to any writer, like, you're gonna get it. Like, the criticism, it's very different if someone says to you, you know, when you first get rejection letters, that's not feedback. That just feels like, you know, that's just rejection, and it internalizes as criticism, I think.
Completely.
It really is. Like, maybe I'm not a writer. Maybe I'm not an illustrator. Maybe I can't do this. And so you have to decide if that kind of rejection is going to stop you. So what you have to decide if your need to do this or your desire to do something is bigger than that no, right? Because you're going to get no 1,000 times in your life.
Completely.
Again, decide early if you're going to go around it, go over it, or go under it. But if it's just going to stand in front of you, you've got some choices to make, and you might as well just stop. Particularly if you're like a creative type, because there's never going to be anything you do that everybody loves. Like,
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, don't even look at your Amazon reviews, okay?
Oh,
Like,
gosh, please
if
don't.
you ever,
No,
if
no.
you write, I've read the meanest things on Amazon reviews that just blow my mind sometimes. I don't know why people get that way, but you know, the internet, we know this. This is like a cultural crisis, I think, the internet. It's so helpful in some regard, but it's just so, it's like this magnet for everybody's
Yeah.
negativity, and then they find people to point it at, and so when you're just out there, you can get that too.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you seen mean
sometimes-
things about you online?
Oh, yes, yes. But I just feel like I wish I could go and get coffee with them and have a chat.
Yeah, and
instead
say
of,
what's wrong.
Yeah, I remember particularly. So I have a book about the ABC and pasta. It's ABC pasta, and it's through a circus. And there's this review of somebody saying, "Well, I don't like pasta, and I don't like the circus." And I was like, "Why are
Well, then why are you looking at this book?
I don't think I'm going to change your mind
There is that
about it.
too. Like, you do have freedom to not read the book. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to like it.
Right,
Like, if you
right.
hate pasta, I mean, I get for Click Clack Moo, I get you know, who knows what a typewriter is anymore? And I said, well, tell your children what a typewriter. Like,
Right.
Tell them
Right.
what this is. I mean, they can recognize it enough. Kids are smart. Like, it's got letters on it, like a computer, right? And so more so now as time passes, because the book is almost 20 years old.
Wow.
And 20 years ago, I would ask kids who's seen a typewriter, and they would all raise their hands, and it was always one at like their grandmother's house, right? Like, my grandma has one, or I had one in the linen closet growing up. I don't know why. I think it was my mother's or my grandmother's from when she was younger, but. And electric blankets, they don't know. A lot of kids don't know what electric blankets are. So I'm like, isn't it just an opportunity to discuss with your children? Like, there used to be a typewriter. I mean, in 20 years, we're going to be explaining what, you know, paint is. You know, everything changes. But I think any book that takes a criticism or is levied a criticism about kids won't know this, or they don't understand this, or the words, they don't use these words. That's
It is
the
an
point.
opportunity, yeah.
That's the point of the book, is to introduce you to something, whether it's a word or a concept or an animal or a color or something that they don't know. I mean, it's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they don't know what typewriters are. And one person just went off, like, I really don't want my children to think cows can type. And I just thought, just step away from your children. Like, step back, let someone else take over. And another one was, I forget which book it was, but it was, this book is unappealing to me and therefore will be unappealing to my children.
Oh my
I was
goodness.
like,
Wow.
you need to step back even further and let your children be who they
Explore
are.
the world, yeah.
And I was just going to add this because I have 2 kids, and I don't always love what they read. I don't love what they read. They read books that I always know what they're reading, and that's also a great opportunity. So even if your daughter is insisting on reading Twilight, if she must, you know, do it. but read it at the same time so you can discuss it with her
Right.
or him or who's ever reading it. And as kids start to pull away from you when they get a little bit older, knowing the same characters from a book gives you this space to talk when they don't want to tell you what's going on in school anymore, or they're having a hard time, or they're supposed to pull away a little bit, and sometimes it's hard to find common ground, but you can find it in what they're reading. You can find it in Hunger Games. You can find it in Twilight. You can find it in, my daughter is reading these James Patterson books that just go on and on and on. There's like 28 of them in a series, Maximum Ride, and they're good books, they're fine. But the fun of it is, what happened with Max today? And she's like, oh my God, Mom, you can't believe what happened with Max today. So even as your kids get older and they're not sitting in your lap anymore to do click, clack, moo, to do anything, you don't have to let go of that reading with them. Even if you have to read it on a sly and don't tell them that you're reading Hunger Games at night, do it anyway. Because then when you have a question they can only answer, it also, I think, makes them feel pretty powerful and still connected.
Right. No, it's an opportunity for a conversation.
Yeah. I think so.
So let's go back for a second to, you were talking about being an attorney and receiving memos.
Yes.
And how hard that was.
Yes.
And I think that's a perfect way to talk a little bit about Click Clack Moo.
About
and how did being an attorney informed your writing of Click Clack Moo?
Click Clack Moo. All right, so this is Click Clack Moo. So, all right, so who knows Click Clack Moo, right? Everyone's like Click Clack. You're the Click Clack Moo lady.
Who doesn't know?
I get introduced that way. This is the Click Clack Moo lady, and it's fine with me, and I love it. You know it too, baby. You know this book. So this was the first book that I had published. I mean, there was a list of rejections that came before it. I will tell you that too for anybody who's going to write. You're going to get rejected no matter what you write. So Harry Potter was rejected all over town for a year before somebody bought that too. So again, don't take your rejections to heart. But Click Clack Moo, I was a journalism major at Penn State, and we typed. There was no, I used a typewriter. And I loved it because the sound of it made writing feel very tangible, not just the pressure of you had to hit it a certain way. And we'd be in news writing class, about 30 of us, going click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, ding, click, clack, click, clack. I mean, for an hour, a couple times a day in every class, that's what you were doing. And what you were doing was so physical that it connects you more to what you're writing. So I think that's where the click, clack came from. But I wrote Click Clack Moo before I even started law school.
Really?
I wrote it before I started law school, and it was actually not long after my father had passed away. So I was a grown-up, I was 29, and not thinking of typing or cows. I mean, it really was maybe like a week after my father died.
Wow.
It was the middle of the night. I was not, I was still in that unhappy place. And I sat down and I wrote Click Clack Moo Cows to type, which has no connection to my emotional state or my life at the time, but it was funny and reassuring in a way that my father always was. I can't explain it. My dad was a police officer, and his stories were just crazy. Just bananas. People ask me if there are other writers in my family, and the answer is no, I guess, but there's a lot of storytellers. And my dad was just a storyteller. And this is New York City in the 70s, so you can imagine the stories. And there'd be the 4 kids around the table, and my dad would come home with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he would tell us these crazy stories about what was happening in New York City, which is why I was not allowed to go there until I was like 25 years old. But he was a storyteller, and this to me just was a story. And when I was done writing it, it's the only story I ever wrote in one sitting. And it's just like I sat down, started type click clack from journalism, from my journal class, click clack moo. I don't know what that is. It was like I was listening to it. I didn't think typing cows. I just thought, what would make that sound? And then it just kept going. And then it was done. And I felt like my dad was there because I was laughing because it was such a ridiculous story, and the kind of story that my dad would tell, but with perps and subway crime in it or something. But it just, it had a very definite, it had a heft to it and a cadence to it that I had not written prior to that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So then when I did go to law school and then I was a lawyer, it does teach you a certain economy of words because you've only got so many pages when you're writing a brief, or when you've got to write the reply and you're limited to this many pages. You learn a certain economy, and that's where I think I started to pull words out. Instead of trying to be verbose, you want to make it succinct. You never want to lecture to a kid, about anything. They're not interested and they don't need it. Lectures. 5-year-olds don't need lectures. 7-year-olds don't need lectures. They need tents and grass and cows and and illustrations and new colors and birds made out of petals. They need that kind of stuff for their brain. But so pulling all the kind of this is a book to help you read, that's what you got to get out of there. You got to get that way out, right? So.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So should we ask if there are any questions? Or?
Well, can I see you draw something?
Absolutely.
You guys want to see Juana draw? Because I do. I've never seen it in action, so I'm dying to see it.
So what should I draw? Any suggestions or?
Any requests?
Any
Is that
requests?
Okay?
Absolutely.
Do you have a request, honey? What do you want to see?
Do you? No? Do you want to think?
Sister, maybe?
You do? Yes? Tell me. Should I draw myself today or as a kid or as a kid? Okay. All right. So I have been drawing myself as a kid for a few years now. So let's see if I've learned how to draw myself as a kid. I'm going to take this so I can talk while I draw. So I'm going to tell you also a little story of when I was a kid. I loved to wear little pigtails. And one day, my cousin, who is 2 years older than I am, said, "Oh, let's play a hair salon." And I was too young to know what that meant. And I said, "Sure." And then she said, "Okay, let's hide behind this big piece of furniture." And then she had some scissors with her, and I just heard snip, snip. And then she had cut my pigtails completely. So my hair was all, uneven. So for a long time, I had to wear a barrette because my hair was completely uneven, and I just had to keep it somehow in control. Fortunately, that cousin did not become a hairstylist. She's a wonderful biologist, so that's a good thing. Okay, so there's my face, and a hand, and another hand. And I loved reading, which I still do. So there I am with a book. Whoops. I don't know, I'm just gonna move around so that I'm not blocking all of you all the time. My arms. And maybe I should be sitting down. I did go to art school, but I didn't go to art school until I was much older. I first studied physical therapy, of all things. And then, the stubbornness is a long, ongoing theme, but I finally ended up in art school, and it was very inspiring to be... I did, and I got in a lot of trouble for drawing in many surfaces. So, yes. But now having children, I feel like I have to let them draw. We'll see, but they're too young to draw yet.
You'll need a magic eraser.
Yeah, I think. So there it is. Ah. All right.
Does anyone else have a request? Or a question?
Or question?
You both collaborate with other people in your work. What advice would you give to someone about the collaborative process between writers and illustrators that make it work?
The collaborative process, I think, looks so different depending on the book. Like with Juana and I having not met, the person it's the editor. It's such a huge part of their job to say, what should this book look like? So now, did you do a spec for SMIC? Because how did they find you? Because as an author, you do not go get your own illustrator. And if you're trying to get published, don't do that. A lot of people always ask me, like, I have a book and my sister-in-law is going to do the art, or my brother, my cousin. Don't do that. Because the editor, that's the editor's job. Write your story, do your artwork, two different things, right? And people will actually hold their stories close until they find the right illustrator. And I'm like, that's such a specific skill, talent, you don't have it, okay? You don't, because it's pretty rare. So I think, like with SMIC, someone else does that.
Yes, and I think that's the best advice if you're trying to get your work published. don't look for an illustrator, because publishing houses want to have a say on who is going to illustrate and how. So don't wait for too long. And the other thing is, if you want to do self-publishing, or if you're working in a collaboration where you want to work with a specific illustrator, stand back and let the illustrator give that visual narrative component, because they are letting the writer do their part. So
Right.
guaranteeing that there's room for both to give their own interpretation, and then be open enough to figure out how it's working. And it's about, just as Doreen was saying earlier, it's about finding to make sure things work, and not about this is what I want to do, I want to say, but making sure that the story works.
Right. Yeah. You have to give up that sense of control that a lot of authors have. I had it too. But I also, you have to know where your job stops. Okay? You're done. You have to let it go. And sometimes you may see stuff that you don't like at first because it wasn't how you envisioned it. Try not to envision it. Get your words on a piece of paper, and then you gotta let go. It's like anything else. You gotta let go and give it space to, if you stay too close to it, you're gonna keep it this big, okay? But if you set it loose to someone else, they're just gonna blow it up, because they're gonna bring all these things that you don't have, or you don't know, or you can't see. So you just have to, it's like how you are with your kids, you can't control them every minute of the day, or how you want them to dress or look or do. You gotta let go of that. It's the same thing with work sometimes. It's just like, let it go.
Absolutely. Yes.
Can you draw the cousin that cut your hair?
Oh,
Oh, yeah, we want to know what he looks like, or what she looks
I will
like.
try my best to be
love that.
kind and loving.
Time has passed
when
now, Juana,
drawing
so
her.
you're
Yeah.
forgiven.
No, I adore her. We're very good friends. Okay. I haven't drawn her, so thank you. She was actually very cute looking, which was a plus for her, because she was a bit of a pain sometimes. And she was often taking flowers to make perfumes, and she was very sweet, but she also had a side that was a little darker. All right, there's Camila. Yeah. Just to tell you, I mean, she was so complicated. In Juana and Lucas, I do share, my father died when I was a baby, which was a very sad thing. And when I must have been 4 or so, and she must have been 5.5, 6, one day she said to me, "You don't have a father." And I went crying home, obviously, because I was so sad. And my mom said to her, "Tell her she doesn't have a puppy." And of course, in less than a week, Camila had a puppy. Yeah. So yeah, a little bit complicated. Yes.
So a question regarding, when you were writing any of your books, did you already have the end product in mind? Not so much not the illustrations aspect, but the text itself, the story?
No. Do I have the whole story in mind when I sit down, or I know how it's going to end up? Almost never. If you write, and again, if you're writing towards an ending, you're only going that way. You have to, if you predetermine your path, I think in anything, you're going to miss out on a lot. And I think stories really gain a lot from detours. I mean, a lot of stuff I write and it turns out it doesn't work, but I will have moved it or gone in a direction I didn't anticipate. I think it's much write with an open mind. I don't know if illustrating is the same way. Never determine where your story has to go, because then you're going to make sure it gets there, and then that's not necessarily going to make a good story, because constantly, which means I spend a lot of days writing and writing and writing. I can spend 3 months writing something, at the end of that time not be happy with any of it. But I might be able to pull out like, oh, you know what actually does work? This second chapter and this character, I want to find out who that is a little bit more, and so I'll go there. But this whole story that I just wrote, or this world that I created, it didn't go anywhere, but it still got me someplace. It's just not where I intended. And I think most of our best things in life are kind of like that. You just don't wind up where you think you're going to, so you're better off not trying to get there.
I read your books and they were so good. I love them.
Thank you,
At
sweetheart.
school.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you like to read. You read a lot of books, right? Do you read a lot? Maybe go to the library and read at home too. Reading's like the most important thing that you can do besides playing and listening to your parents. Those are the only 3 things you really have to do: play, read, and listen to your parents. For a very long time, that's all you should be doing. I actually believe that. I do.
And take a shower every now and then.
Yeah, well, you know, you guys are clean though. You're pretty clean. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Hi, this is a question for Juana. For your next 2 books in your series, are they based on your childhood events? They're all.
They are all based in my childhood, and loosely based, because just as Doreen was saying, if just not to constrict myself and not to feel like I have to stay so true to facts, and fortunately it's fiction, so I can just let go and see wherever it takes me. And for the first book, we changed the ending about 5 times.
Did you?
Oh yes. And you just have to realize, okay, it's not working, let's figure out some other way to end it that will be memorable and fun and exciting, and that it really makes sense with the story. And so the 2 next books are definitely based in situations that happened as I was growing older. I'm finishing, hopefully, the illustrations for the second one right now, and it has been very interesting to find that balance between staying true to the story and also true to myself as what I want to share. Because there are many details that were very meaningful to me, or that were very funny when they happened, but once you translate them into a book, they don't really resonate with the reader. So you just have to let go of those and try to interpret things differently.
Right.
I don't know if that happens in your experience
It
as well.
does. There are things that are, I think that's exactly right, things that you think would make a great story, a great book, and yeah, when you put them down on the page, because you bring so much to it in your own memory, your own emotions are in there, and if you can't convey that, and sometimes you can't, because
Right.
it's too personal or it's too distinct to your experience, it's hard to translate that out. What does your family think of do they see themselves in there? Do they have comments about how they're portrayed?
Especially this cousin.
Yeah.
When she learned that I was writing the first book, all of a sudden I received a call around 3:30 in the morning, and I was really worried. We were very good friends, and I said, "Is everything okay? Is everything all right?" And she was crying, and she said, "I know you're excited about writing this book, but are you really gonna tell how I was as a kid?" Or I said, "Don't worry, you're not even in the book, so it's fine. It's fine. Not yet. Yeah." But in general, they've been very excited and happy, and they've laughed. And I think in a way, it has been a really interesting way for me to open conversation with family members in a way that was completely unexpected.
Wow.
To remember my grandparents, who were an essential part of growing up, because my mom became a widow very, very young, and so my grandparents were an essential part of growing older. So it gave me an opportunity to revisit life in a very exciting way, and remember my grandparents, and remember their house, and remember Bogota, and all these things. So it has been a very powerful experience.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
We're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.